economy and winning the global race economically. But this now becomes a national security issue, as evidenced by what's happened here with this cybersecurity breach that happened with the Colonial Pipeline. And so by building this expertise in America, staying on the cutting edge, this is how we can protect and build greater resilience for our
network. Are we with our guests?
So let's turn to the U.S. economy because we have been.
All right, folks, good afternoon, and it is that time of the week. This is the Marketplace Reset and Jumpstart Show, broadcasting on the Kalalu Network, WSDX, Tempo, La Mega Mundal, and Caribbean Passport. We're also an affiliate of Bloomberg Radio. Welcome to the program, and as usual, we have a fun-filled packed show for you with a lot of information. So make sure that you're strapped in and ready to go. I'm Anthony Weeks, executive producer and host of the Marketplace and Jumpstart, joined by my colleagues who are co-host and contributor of the program. Welcome both Linda and Carolyn. How you ladies doing today?
Wonderful.
Superb.
Wonderful and superb. Wow.
That's it.
That's because we don't have rain. You know, everything.
You don't have rain?
Weather.
Is that why it's wonderful and superb, because it's not raining?
And because we see you, Anthony, this is midweek.
That's so
you
sweet.
know that's what he wants, Linda. You know that's what he wants.
I just had to get my Wednesday points. You know, last week we had Wednesday points. We both achieved them, and so it's, you know, day after birthday, still in the flow, and just excited about our guest today.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So when you say it's not raining where you are, we're live, and so we're live on radio, we're live on live streaming and broadcasting on television. So where is it that it's not raining?
Right now in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, and at least the 5 miles between my house and Linda's house, which is our studios, it is not raining because we've had some gloomy gray days, and we've gotten Caribbean, 80s, and then we plummeted to the 40s at night. And so now we're dealing with the 60s. It was 46 when I got up and went out this morning. So it's not raining right now in the DC metro area.
Fantastic.
But when we say it's unusually cool, I think we're in an unusually cool period. And, it's interesting because I found myself, like many others, as soon as the weather changed, I was ready to bolt out of the house and go do a million things. And often I'd leave the house without my mask because I just forgot. So yeah. I've since put, all my PPE in my car. So when I feel the need to just take a drive and just go out, I'm well protected.
Forgetting the mask and leaving the mask is becoming a regular thing for me. And so I have to make a conscious effort to remember to always, as soon as I am getting ready to leave the car, enter a building, I got to remember I have to pull it out because I'm having this. I'm all of a sudden now I'm just having this sort of gap in my thinking that you need a mask.
Mm-hmm. And see, I find that surprising. Well, for us, I could see that we would naturally do it because we have had a dramatic shift from winter weather to springtime/summer feeling weather. So for us, that means break out, go to the park, do everything outside. But you have had moderate temperatures all along. It seems like there shouldn't be that mindset change because it's not like it just got warm where you are. Just saying.
You're Barbara Waltering him. You remember?
Am I really?
Oh my gosh! Are you saying that?
Oh my.
Are you saying I should not? I should always be on point because the temperature hasn't changed. Of course, the temperature changes.
Right. I'm just saying, if for us the nice temperatures are such a dramatic change for us, that threw us into a state of all is well. But you have always been having this Caribbean high.
I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it right there. I'm gonna let you have that one. Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So
You're right, Linda. Sorry for Barbara Waltering you.
no, that's okay. That's okay. Every so often, you're given a little bit of an allowance to do that kind of thing.
Okay.
All right,
I
good,
kinda
good. So
wonder if-
today, what do we focus? What's the topic of discussion? Who do we have? The guest is in the studio. So before we bring the guest up, give us a little bit of a background on what we're talking about today.
Well, first of all, let me just introduce, and before you even bring her in, this is Dr. Elizabeth Opheli, and she is a nationally and internationally recognized clinical scientist as well. She has a particular focus on cardiovascular disease. She is a cardiologist, and she is an incredible one. And I do mean as in unbelievable. The list of what she has done and just her expertise is just renowned. So we're excited to have her here because at the heart of every matter is the heart.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Oh, listen,
So that's a great statement.
listen to you getting all
Look at
poetic.
Carolyn. Yes,
I
listen to
know,
you get all
I'm waxing poetic.
So our guest is in the studio. There she is.
Dr.
Looking
Opheli.
like she's ready. Welcome to the Marketplace Reset and Jumpstart. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? I was trying to decide if I
We
should.
hear you beautifully.
You look great. You sound great. You sound like you're ready to go.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And welcome to the Reset Wednesday segment on health and well-being. So we are going to jump right into it. How about that?
Sounds
And
good.
we'll see you a little bit later on, Anthony.
Yeah, sounds good, guys.
Awesome. So,
Outstanding.
Dr. Opheli, we are so excited to have you here. And I'd like to just pull a few things from your bio that I think our viewers and our listeners would love to hear. Currently, you serve as the chair for the board of directors of the Association of Black Cardiologists. And your motto is saving hearts and minds of a diverse America. And that's really exciting for us. You've also been credited with helping raise more than $175 million to fund pioneering research and infrastructure at the wonderful location where you are, which is the Morehouse School of Medicine. And then in addition to that, you have published over 150 scientific papers and delivered over 700 presentations to national and international audiences. And for us, that it is such an honor to be in your presence.
Absolutely. And welcome. Thank you for spending this quality time with us to share with the listeners and the audience your expertise in this area of cardiology and all things as it relates to COVID and our heart health, and what we as a community need to continue to do as we think about staying safe, and learn more about you and how folks can get connected into the things that you are expert in and espouse to share, particularly in communities of color, like clinical trials. Very important. So let's hop into it. Tell us a little bit about your research and your work, because without research and that type of foundational work, medicines and policies and advocacies and practices cannot exist. And so you have made some great strides in those areas.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Carolyn and Linda. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. So as Carolyn said, I am a cardiologist, and in my work in cardiology, a big part of what we focus on is the heart health, obviously. But the heart is affected by a whole host of things: stress, diet, and what's going on with our environment, what we call the social determinants. I think one of the things that we're recognizing with COVID is those social determinants, where people work, how they get to work, who they engage with when they're at work. Everything came together with the pandemic. And of course, we're learning too that there are aspects of the heart that actually has some relationship with how the virus interacts with the body in terms of the inflammation. And so COVID has taught us a lot, but it's also brought back some of our age-old challenges in terms of who's getting it, how are they accessing healthcare, what do they have in terms of their environment to protect them? Are they sleeping 10 to a room? So, the typical things that maybe we could ignore
Mhm.
for COVID, we clearly cannot ignore now. And then when you look at something like high blood pressure, which affects Black and Brown communities more severely, it turns out that that's one of the things that COVID actually makes worse. People can't get their blood pressure measured. They cannot check on what's going on. In the beginning, when we had the initial shutdown, it was terrible. It's a little bit better. It's much better now, I should say, because the government allowed us to bring on board telemedicine. And of course, that we could talk to patients about what's going on with your blood pressure. And you can imagine when you're under stress, but you don't want to go to the ER, which many people did not want to go. We had people just coming in with strokes and heart attacks. So there's just a lot that we have learned. And I think from the standpoint of our community, now we have an opportunity to just rewind, to just take a breath and come back and ask ourselves, what are we doing about prevention,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What are we doing to care for ourselves, whether it's making sure we get enough sleep, talking to family members even when we can't see them? All of these things matter in terms of our overall health.
Mhm.
One thing we're learning too is there's a connectivity between mental health and physical health. We didn't think so before, but now we do.
Yes.
Wow.
Heart health.
So, Dr. Opheli, let me ask you this question because, particularly in Black and Brown community, and I think about even family members, there's certain diseases, and I don't want to say that they're acceptable, but they're so commonplace that we discount them. One of them is indeed having high blood pressure, and I will tell you that family members have not considered that as a disease. It's just like it's just something they have. They won't give it they won't elevate it to calling it a disease when in fact it's a condition. But then and also diabetes. So as it relates to high blood pressure, even now, I mean, I still have people that dismiss it. They say, "Oh yeah, I have high blood pressure." And I don't take the medicine because, and then they'll give me the reasons why they don't, because high blood pressure is not such a big deal. But you're saying it's a huge effect on the heart.
It is a huge effect on the heart. So, some of it is actually, I think, the way the healthcare system and physicians sometimes communicate with patients about their blood pressure. Patients have been told sometimes that, you know what, your body is used to you having that level of blood pressure. You're okay. And we know that's not the case. In fact,
Mm.
high blood pressure leads to things like thickness of the heart muscle, also leads to, is it me? Are you guys hearing a lot of clicks? Or
There's a clicking, yeah. But I don't. There we go.
you think I should switch to mine?
Well, while you're switching to that, it is so true. Having worked in the healthcare system, this acceptance, but it also goes in line with in terms of the diabetes and in terms of the high blood pressure. You spoke about the social determinants and access to quality care, access to quality foods, and really access to the ability that it is okay to get a normal amount of sleep and exercise as part of your normal living strategy, your lifestyle, that is not necessarily as prevalent in communities of color, and therefore we experience a high disproportional disparity in these other areas. So you were saying?
Yeah. So I was saying that the way the heart affects the blood pressure affects the heart is actually multifold. The first thing is when the heart is seeing a very high blood pressure over time, it leads to the heart muscle getting thicker.
Mm.
It is not true that high blood pressure is a condition that is part of you and your health, right? Yes, our community actually have it right. We say, I have hypertension, and they think
Right.
that is I am hyper, therefore the tension is high. Well, half of that is true, but the other half is when you do have hypertension And I tell my patients is your body is constantly seeing, if we say the normal blood pressure is 120 for the top number, and you're running 130, 140, even 160, some people come in at 180. Well, the body doesn't want to keep pushing against that pressure. So I explain to my patient that the body will adjust in the short term. But part of that adjustment is the heart muscle gets thicker because it's really, I explain that if you're trying to push against something that is kind of tight or narrowed, it's more work for the heart. But the heart's going to do its job. It's going to circulate that blood around your body. And so part of that circulation then means that individuals will begin to notice sometimes some difficulty when they're trying to be active. They'll get short of breath. And then when they come in, then we notice that, well, your heart is not much thicker. And unfortunately, with some people, it goes on long enough that the heart begins to enlarge. And that leads to what we call heart failure. So the process can take sometimes a few years or more years, depending on what else is going on. Say, for example, women who have had children can have a little bit more susceptibility, or if you have a family history, that can also be a problem.
Um, how do you measure that? What's the measurement in terms of understanding the thickness of the heart and therefore your trajectory towards heart disease and then ultimately heart failure, which is a scary thought when you think about it. What,
Very.
and what is in fact some of the ways that we can reverse these conditions in our lives?
Right. So we start out, for example, with a simple thing. You've heard about the blood pressure measurement that people sometimes take when they're in the pharmacy. That's a level. That's simple. Some people carry their own devices. But when it comes to looking at the heart itself, beyond just the blood pressure, we can run what's called an electrocardiogram, right? They put electrodes on the chest, and it picks up signals from the heart. So it's like an indirect measure. If the signal is really high and strong, sometimes we think that may suggest that the heart muscle is thicker, because the thick heart muscle will send a bigger signal through the electrocardiogram. And electrocardiogram also looks at other things. So for example, we call it an ECG or EKG for short. So when people go to the emergency room complaining about chest pains, for example, they'll have one of these or should have one of these done. I tell my patients, if you're going in with chest pain and they're trying to send you out without an EKG, that's the barest minimum. Don't leave until you have an EKG. And what happens with the EKG is it can sometimes show if a portion of the heart muscle is weak, the signal is not going to be as good. But the EKG is like a first step. The next thing, as far as the blood pressure assessment, is we go back in with what's called an ultrasound, similar to what we do for pregnant women, except this time we're focusing on the heart. And when you put the ultrasound on, you can actually see the heart muscle, the heart valves, and you can actually pick up how blood is flowing inside the heart. So if you have a thicker muscle, we can measure that and tell you that your heart muscle is getting thicker. When I tell my patients their heart muscle is thick, I try to let them know that it doesn't mean that all is lost, but it's like a warning sign. It's saying this blood pressure you've been carrying around is starting to have an impact on your heart function. There is a relationship between the thick heart muscle and, as I mentioned earlier, heart failure, but also stroke. People who suffer a stroke, people who have a thicker heart muscle have a higher risk of having a stroke. So whenever I see that, I say to my patients, this is a wake-up call. It means the blood pressure needs to be regulated and well controlled. Sometimes you can do it with diet, cutting down on salt, resting more, sleeping well, trying to manage stress, but don't assume that because you have no symptoms, everything is well. Because up until now, what I mentioned is all of this could be going on and there's nothing happening. You're not feeling anything. You're going about your business as usual. And we don't know until we check the blood pressure and we do the ultrasound. So who should have that ultrasound? I'm sorry, you had a question.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry because this is so intriguing because this is important in real time, in real life. So as I'm hearing you say, because I often hear people say they have blood pressure medicine, and they seem to take it the same way a person would take like a Tums if they had an acid, problem with the reflux or something. Is it if you're on blood pressure medicine and you've been prescribed blood pressure medicine, does that now become a daily part of your routine, or is it a as needed kind of thing?
Such a good question. It is not as needed. So let's be clear. Having high blood pressure is like a manifestation of changes that have taken place in the blood vessel. So the body is no longer able to maintain what is considered a normal blood pressure. And it is true that sometimes if people are coming in and they are like 20, 30 pounds overweight, have bad diet, have never exercised or not exercising regularly, it is possible to fix, manage those lifestyle factors. And even some people have what we call sleep apnea. When they go to sleep, the air is not flowing properly. Those all lead to blood pressure. So if there are things that can be corrected, and they get corrected, you lose weight, your diet becomes perfect, you treat your sleep apnea, yes, it is possible that the blood pressure can be controlled without taking medicines every day. But for the vast majority of individuals, we actually notice that you have to take your blood pressure medicine every day. In fact, for my patients, I tell them, check your blood pressure, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening, sometimes at night, 2 or 3 times a week, so you get a sense of what your own rhythm is with the blood pressure.
I would like, ladies, if you don't mind, as I'm listening to the conversation, and I can't help but I can't resist to be able to jump in and ask the question of ethnicity and culture. You've heard so much about why people of color were more impacted because of COVID. But, obviously before COVID, after COVID, our ethnicity, our race, our culture is always going to play a big role in who we are. And you always hear people of color, Black folks from the South, or Black folks from the Caribbean. We have a high, content of carbohydrate, starch, sugar, and a lot of that is, for the lack of a better description, poison to our body, right? But that's all we know. That's how we've lived all our lives, consuming that kind of food. And so we have either high blood pressure, we have diabetes or glucose issues.
Mhm.
And so how do you change a culture to understand what you're eating is literally making you sick? And if they've been doing that for hundreds of years, how do you change that?
This is a very important question, right? But I have hope because I have seen what happens when you actually let people into their bodies, right? Because our body is external, but it's internal. And now we have all kinds of technology that allow people to monitor themselves. I find that when you share information with people and say, okay, yes, you've been eating this way. When we've looked at generations of people, whether grandmother or great grandmother was eating this way is one thing, but what else was grandmother and great grandmother doing? They were not overweight, they were physically active. So I tell people it all works together. If you're going to eat all of that stuff, then you better figure out a way to work it out. On the other hand, if you're going to moderate, then also moderate with your diet and add a physical activity. But if you're confused or not certain, then measure it, monitor it. You can monitor your blood sugar, especially if you've been diagnosed with diabetes, you better monitor your blood sugar. You can measure your blood pressure. And people then learn how to adapt to their body. because I really believe that, and we actually have tested it. We have a technology called Health 360X. Over 700 African American women and men have used it. They have diabetes, they have high blood pressure. Research has been funded by all kinds of organizations, including the NIH and the American Heart Association. It turns out that if you give people information, and it's not just stuff you just put out there in the atmosphere, you give them a health coach to work with them. People want to know how to be better, but they just need help. And if we think that the healthcare system, at least in the United States, is currently configured, will do it, that's an error, because I am tasked with seeing X number of patients within a certain time, and I have maybe 10, 15 minutes, and that's it. Well, this patient is coming in with all the stuff they have questions about. So what we did is we have these coaching models where you work with them outside of the hospital, with churches, in doctors' offices, and it helps. People get better. People do better, but it's not a one-size-fits-all.
So
Right.
I
So
also want
Dr. Opheli, I was just going to say, and Anthony, I'm just going to step into your role for a minute. We're at the top of the hour, and this discussion is getting really rich. So
Right.
I don't want to slide off that mountain, but is it okay that we do our break? Because when we come back, I'd love to know more about this technology that she's talking about.
Right, absolutely, and food for thought. Just food for thought as we go into this break. I need confirmation from you, doctor, in terms of whether or not if you have high blood pressure, right, which is a thing that we struggle with, that high blood pressure does indeed cause a heart attack and also does indeed causes stroke. I hear about it, but I want to hear from you as a cardiologist that there is a direct correlation between the two, because people really need to hear that. Having high blood pressure needs to be taken seriously, because when you have high blood pressure, it will either trigger a heart attack or a stroke. And I wanted to hear that from you, and we can elaborate that when we come back on the other side.
That is absolutely correct. High blood pressure will lead to a stroke. And unfortunately, when the blood pressure is getting to that level, because there's a level we call a stroke level, when it gets into 180s, 200s on the top number, you're not going to have any symptom. People think that I'm going to have a severe headache when my blood pressure is that high. No, you do not necessarily have that. So the answer to both your questions is yes and yes. The way it happens is different for both, but those two endpoints do happen. And that's part of the reason why, a big part of the reason why Black and brown people, especially Black folk, have the risk we have with things like heart attacks, strokes, and congestive heart failure.
All right, fantastic. We're going to take a break, as my colleague Carolyn says. This is the Marketplace Show Reset and Jumpstart, broadcasting on WSDX, broadcasting on the Kalu Network, and broadcasting on Temple Network, La Mega Mundial, and Caribbean Passport. We'll be right back.
Small business is a part of all of us each and every day. It's where we eat, it's where we shop, it's where we go to meet our friends and colleagues. In the wake of COVID-19, our small business community desperately needs our help. We must do our part to help our local communities to once again thrive. We must focus our attention on the small businesses that are the fabric of our great nation. SureUp is a network of small business owners, their employees, and local consumers all working in unison to support each other. By creating incentives for consumers to think local before considering regional and national providers to fulfill their needs, we create local job opportunities and rebuild our communities. In addition, through AI-driven tools and machine learning, in just 5 minutes a day, SureUp assists business owners in improving their social media presence, which enhances their visibility among consumers and levels the playing field so that local businesses can better compete with large, name-brand online competitors. When local businesses leverage the SureUp platform, full-time and part-time employees, whether W-2 or 1099, are rewarded with a variety of voluntary perks and member benefit options. These include discounts on the things people do every day, access to low-cost, subscription-based telehealth and teletherapy, discounted prescription drug plans, connection to exclusive Prosper resources, and so much more. All for less than the cost of a cup of coffee each day. The Jumpstart Marketplace is here to support the health and wellness of individual employees, as well as the health of businesses in the local communities in which we live and work. We're all in this together, so join us as we reinvigorate our local community and improve the physical and financial health of working America.
All right, folks, we are back. Welcome back to the Marketplace Reset Show and Jumpstart, broadcasting live on WSDX, Kalalu Network, Tempo Networks, La Mega Mundal, Caribbean Passport. We are a Bloomberg radio affiliate. Welcome back to the program. Ladies.
Well, that simply means that we are where everyone wants to be and listen. So that's the good news. We were having a great conversation and didn't want to get tied up into the top of the hour, but you know, as part of that conversation, we said we wanted to hear from you specifically regarding stroke, as well as heart attack and the co-relationship to high blood pressure and cardiovascular diseases, that they can in fact create that health outcome.
Yes, that is correct. So what I say to my patients is to think about the heart as this pump. It does its work every single day, every minute beating between 60 and 100 times. Of course, we don't want it to be as high as 100, but when you're active and doing a lot of stuff, you can actually go over 100. So one of the things that I encourage them to think about is if you have this pump that's doing all of this work constantly, regularly, then think about what happens when the parameters around that work gets altered, either by an acute stressful episode where all of a sudden your heart is beating so fast and so hard, or the blood pressure itself goes so high. So what happens then is there's this extra load on the heart, and the heart has a couple of options to adapt. In the long term, the muscles get thicker, the blood vessels themselves get thicker, just so the blood can be delivered, because it doesn't want to deliver less blood than it needs to circulate, because all the organs have to receive blood. But then the trade-off for that thickness is the heart is now functioning at a less efficient level.
Yes.
And it can be so inefficient that it suffers a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, other things could be going on. Say, for example, your cholesterol is really high. Your blood sugar has been not well controlled. A1C for some people, which is how we monitor blood sugar over time, sometimes over in double digits. A1C should be less than 6. Some people coming in, it's 12, 13, and they've been totally unaware of it. All of these things basically are insults to the blood vessel. And the more the blood vessel is getting insults, the narrower it's getting. And so at the end of the day, that's what creates the stress. So some people will say, you know what, and some people smoke. Oh, my grandmother smoked. Nothing ever happened to them. All of the combinations can be different. If you have a family history of a heart attack or stroke, know that your risk is higher than the average person. If members of your family have suffered stroke or been on dialysis, those are all things that are saying there's a problem with the blood vessels. So again, I don't mean to scare people, but people ought to be scared. If they've been diagnosed with high blood pressure, they ought to be scared into action. not scared into, I'm confused. I don't know what to do. You have things
I think scaring people must
Yeah.
happen. If you're not
Yes.
scaring people, people are not going to act. I mean, you got to
Right.
scare them.
You
Yeah.
got to scare them. And and it's interesting because I feel like we're leaving out a complete segment of the population in our discussion, because if we are here as adults and we have all the resources and all the knowledge and all the ability to move in that vein, lose the weight, eat healthier, um, rest well, access our health providers to get the expertise. And I love what you just said. Use the monitorings, because we now can look inside of our body, and that is a real game changer. What do we do with our young people that we can bring this up so that it's really no longer a stretch? It's just a natural part of their lifestyle. We see kids who are in sports programs who are dropping from strokes at very early ages, and that's because they're carrying around all of this malhealth. How do we, what can we do as advocates to not only just raise the awareness, but put new strategies in place, new methodologies? What can we incorporate into our school systems, you think, that would make a difference?
That is such a good question. And people have tackled this in different ways. There's no question that the school system needs to pay more attention to physical activity. Because unfortunately, our young people are spending more time in front of devices. And so they're not as active as they used to be, even outside of school. So a lot of the pediatricians that I talk to and I work with are looking for ways to make it interesting for young people to be physically active and outdoors and engaged. And it is the case that we deliver some of the activity, some of the education via the web, and now with everything that's going on with COVID, a lot of our kids are in front of computers. It's fine to acknowledge that, but also say, where is the balance? And where is the balance with the fast food and the choices that young people make because we train them that way? Unfortunately, it begins with a child maybe that was premature birth, already has odds in terms of their nutrition. Then, they're fed, not natural breast milk, but artificial milk. And then they grow up and they're consuming high carbohydrate diets, processed foods, not fresh vegetables. All of this is stacked against the children. So by the time they're 7, these habits are set.
Wow.
Yeah, they're set. They have what they call the sweet tooth. They don't even like things that is not as salty because they've been growing up eating all that salt, all that preserved foods. So we have a task ahead of us. But I don't think we should. I always think it's important to be optimistic. I used to hate to talk about obese children because when children get labeled, then, they are going to carry that. The important thing is to let them realize that there's still an opportunity for them to be in peer interactions and engagement that's healthy for them, and that they can then manage this. But we need to provide them with the information about good diet, about good exercise routine, about good sleep patterns that can lead them to better health. I don't think all is lost. And I think we should be positive with our young people and show them examples. And that's, I think, the most important thing is examples where people have gone from being overweight and obese to actually being healthy and what it's taking to get there.
And I think your point is so well taken regarding being able to look inside yourself with the type of diagnostic and monitoring devices that we have that will help people to see what they can't see and therefore put it top of mind. I remember when my daughter, as an example, had really severe buck teeth as a very young girl, and her new teeth came in and they were all straight, but she was a thumb sucker, and those things were just shooting straight out. And I feel bad because so was I. And her dentist, orthodontist, she was too young to have braces. modeled her and was able to show her a computer simulation of how her face would go from this beautiful little cherub to this elongated face, and how her teeth would drop if she stopped sucking her thumb. Can I say that I watched a young person go cold turkey, not sucking her thumb? And her teeth are beautiful naturally now without any dental intervention, orthodontic intervention. And so I like this. I wonder if we are in a position, or if you have recommendations, how can we bring that type of simulation, looking into ourselves, into this school environment through your work? Because I think if we can start getting our young generations really queued up, their lifestyle, their demand on healthy foods in grocery stores in every community, their ability to monitor and manage their workload, meaning their school and their extracurriculum, will be a part of their natural rhythm. Stepping back a little bit more from social media, which is a driver of a lot of activity. But how do we even get that into okay, so let's get it into where they are located. Let's do that.
Right.
Because I'm just convinced that if we can do it, we can change a generation, and therefore we can change this health paradigm that we're all very keenly aware of.
I agree with you, but the example you gave about your daughter is what's called the power of self-efficacy, right? She basically realized that she had power to make change, because previously the sucking of her thumb was how the crutch was, how she thought she would be confident. She didn't think she could stop it. But when somebody showed her a simulation, if you just could stop doing this a few months down the road, and it's not going to be years and years, this is what it could look like. So that essentially brought the future to her present. And a lot of the time when you're young, when you don't have control, or when you're poor and you don't have control, you discount the future. That is real research that's been shown. You discount the future. Well, we can talk all we want about how bad high blood pressure is. Mama is saying, you know what? I got to get food on the table for my kids. I got to get whatever I can afford. We have to live today to get to tomorrow. So a lot of these technology platforms are saying, how do we bring the future closer to the present to make that a reality for that person, so they can think about, what are some of the things that I can do even in my present state? Because it is true, poverty does limit your options, but there are poor people that have good access, if they make that choice, to food that will be less destructive. So some of, it's not yet prime time, but some of these technologies involve creating an avatar, somebody that can kind of look back at you yourself, essentially, and say, and then it's interesting too that some of them are technologies that are using artificial intelligence and programming to say to people, okay, I'm not judging you, but you're eating that. But let's think about what happens when that gets in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And people can go that far-fetched, I'm going to taste it, I'm going to want it. But if you get in front of the taste of it and show them, we're all vain. I mean, I like to get in some clothes. So I'll say to myself, well, I can reward myself, right? And
Yes.
Kids need the short-term rewards. Not don't tell them that, if you do this long enough, you're going to live to be 100 years old. No, they don't care about that. But you're saying, interacting with your peers, you can actually bring additional knowledge that you've gained. And if those children think that they can now be peer leaders, I mean, all bets are off in terms of just how high and how hard they will try to get to that goal, even as adults.
That
That's
is
fantastic.
Same word. And you know what? It's interesting. There was and we might all remember it. There was a commercial, and it showed 2 eggs in a skillet, and it says, "This is your brain." And then it turned on the fire, and it says, "This is your brain on drugs."
Yep.
That was impactful right away. And so I think what you two have been talking about at this point is just being able to know. I remember the same thing. This is your lung, and this is your lung if you smoke just.
Yes.
So what kind of, real life things do we have right now? You mentioned your technology before, but what can we show people? Because that does make a difference.
Right. So our technology right now is in the hands of adults, to adults that have diagnosed chronic illness, either high blood pressure, diabetes, sleep disorders, heart disease. And the whole idea with our technology is to take things that we know we can measure: blood pressure, blood glucose, physical activity, the diet we eat, and then the medications that we're on, and then put it into an algorithm that gets a signal back to the patient. So, for example, if you measure your blood pressure and it's a certain number, the signal will come back that this blood pressure is in a green range, which is good, or it's in an orange range, or it's in a red zone. And over time, within that red zone, other messages come back to the patient. The coaches get involved with them to say, okay, what are you doing differently? And we are able to connect physical activity, the diet, and the blood pressure, so people can see what they need to be modifying. It's not like really rocket science. We haven't even put in AI programming into that yet, although we plan to do that, because what happens with AI is it's going to take lots and lots of the data that we've gathered and say to me, this is my data. This is how quickly I went from good blood pressure to bad blood pressure and back again to good blood pressure. Therefore, think about what I need to be doing to maintain good blood pressure. So it becomes a personalized engagement, not something foreign. I came to this idea with the technology when a patient of mine told me that, nobody can ever regulate my blood pressure. Doctors tell me this is how my body is. And then I told this patient, I said, okay, what I need you to do is take your blood pressure.
Uh-oh. We're getting a little bit of feedback. Oh, there we are. Take your blood pressure is like a cliffhanger.
Take your blood pressure before you go for your walk, and take it again after you've walked when you come back. And her blood pressure was like 10 points different. And she said to me, is that really possible that when I walk, my blood pressure can change? I said, yes, it is. And that's what happens. And I explained the physiology. I said, while you were walking, your heart was pumping regularly. The blood was circulating more effectively. The blood vessels were opening up because things were moving and your body was moving with it. And then when you came back, that blood vessel that's open hangs around for a while, and your blood pressure is much lower because your heart didn't have to work so hard. I said, if you keep doing that, that maintains the blood pressure at a lower level. And so over time, we may be able to take off some of your medicines, because with Black patients, what they want to know is, can I get off of these medicines? I said, but we can't take them off unless we're monitoring and measuring, because we don't want it to be dangerous. Again, that has power, because that patient saw that there's something that I did, that my blood pressure got better. If that can happen with just walking, well, there are other things I could be doing, like my diet, like cutting down salt. And indeed, they see the impact. So that's that part of it.
That's excellent. So how can we access this kind of technology?
Yeah. So we are in the App Store and with iOS and Google Play. So it's Health 360X. So there's an X at the end of the 360, 360. First, you have to put health.
We're getting our stuff ready, okay?
360.
So we want to encourage everyone.
X.
If you're watching us, go ahead and pick up whether it's Android, which is what this one is, or Apple, and go to Health 360X.
And then
there we go.
This will come up. And when it comes up, when you say Health 360 mobile, do you see mobile? When I say 360X, mobile pops up. You see that?
Well, yes, we do. 360X. Okay.
And you see mobile, and you hit it, and you will get something like this.
Outstanding. Yeah. This is a good show and tell. And here we go.
You can also go to health360x.com. and go to a website to get, if they're having trouble with the App Store. But you can get it very easily. You have to register, of course. And we have coach. There you go. She's on.
Yes, it's AccuHealth. It's AccuHealth, right?
That's right. AccuHealth is the company that.
Oh, I am getting it right now.
Yeah.
So this is I congratulate you. This is phenomenal. So this is your app. You're a wonderful African-American female cardiologist powerhouse that is not only bringing your medical education and the power of what you know. There we go.
There we go. We got it.
But you have developed and worked with key technologists to bring and put this into a very hands-on, usable, anywhere you are app. And we just so encourage it. I'm going to follow this. I think you should put some of us to the test.
Okay.
And take us through your demo and let us be your success stories among all the other success stories, because we have a lot of living to do. We made it onto the other side of COVID. And when I say the other side, I mean the more tragic side. The we don't have a vaccine, side. We now have a vaccine. We now have knowledge. We now have, just wearing our masks are part of our everyday experience. Washing our hands every twist and turn, which I love, because now my children, I don't have to remind them as I used to before COVID. It is something that I notice they're doing. And then really anybody that walks into my home, that's the first thing they do. May I use your facilities to wash my hands? And I'm thinking, absolutely. And thank you for that. So it's our habits have changed.
Can I show you something?
Yes.
Absolutely. Let's go together. Go right ahead.
When you guys finally do the registration and you see something like this screen is what comes up. Say hello, your name. You can scroll up and you'll see at the bottom, it says coaches and doctors. And for both of you, I'll say, enter my name. When you open it up,
all right.
Pick me, and that will allow me to sort of engage with you.
Wow.
Yeah. So
yes, because in my family, my father did pass from a stroke following surgery, but he was a smoker, and he is from Orangeburg, South Carolina. So to Carolyn's point, if we didn't eat it when it was fully dead, there was not, we were eating vegetables when they were not vegetables. They may have been vegetables at some point, but they were no longer vegetables.
Yeah.
Salt was an absolute staple on the table. And we had all kind of fancy salt shakers that were just a part of our ability. And just on and on and on. But we were active as young people. But back then, because you could ride your bike around Washington, D.C. and just come home before the sun, went down kind of behavior. But over time, that sedentary lifestyle kicked in. And, the incidences of high blood pressure have come in our family. The incidences of diabetes, we had no one in our families, but lifestyle drove many of our members of our family into diabetic states. I feel fortunate that wasn't one of me, but just the COVID-20 that lots of us put on is. And so you just want to get to a better health paradigm. And I love the fact that we can use technology to bring you closer to us, the patient, and the health consumer. So if we're not a direct patient, we're still a health consumer. And this app allows us to be that health consumer. Thank you so very much. Yes. And we're reminded of this whole cardiovascular alignment or association with COVID, because you had mentioned something at the top of the hour that the COVID has a unique impact on the heart. And that's even scarier.
It is.
If you think we have heart disease just because of lifestyle, what have we now faced? What's the monster ahead of us?
Exactly. And it turns out that keeping these all the conditions we mentioned under control is actually important for COVID as well. So
so there is an association to maintaining this level of lifestyle health paradigm, the shift that we have to go through, whether it's sleep or not. Carolyn and I, some of our business took us into the wee hours of the morning because our business colleagues were on the other side of the world. So, we were taking cat naps, every hour on the hour, naturally calling ourselves our natural, we're just owls, and you're thinking to
Yeah,
ourselves,
exactly.
that doesn't make any sense any longer.
Well, we were being reasonable businesswomen, so we thought, because 9 o'clock at night here was 9 o'clock in the morning at China, and China wanted to talk to us at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which was 2 a.m. And then literally she will say, okay, you watch out for the WhatsApp chat, and then I'll check in, or you check the phone calls, or you check the emails. And we were trading off, not realizing we were jeopardizing health
Yes.
instead of health.
Big time. Big time.
Yes, and I think that is, I'm so pleased that we have become associated with Anthony and this health platform, delivering these amazing health and these credible, important health messages. And just a few weeks before you came on board, we had someone on one of our regulars that come on, the wellologist, that talked to us about sleep and why sleep is so critical. And we've had Dr. Barbara Hutchinson, another cardiologist, to come on and talk to us in the early fall 2020 about sleep.
Yep.
And that's my new thing, sleep.
Yeah. Yes. Sleep is such therapy, and we all should take it. But like you guys, I fall into that category. It's like working, and now I'm trying to do better, but it's a task.
Well, we are so grateful to have had you here and to listen to the points Anthony needed for his own ears to hear, that high blood pressure and diabetes can lead directly to stroke or to heart attacks. But the other point you said, you like to be positive. We have to fix ourselves where we are. There's always something we can do within reason, but if we're smart enough, we're going to listen to the signals that we're giving. And high blood pressure is a signal that we need to listen to.
Absolutely. Well said.
Well, this has been great. I got to tell you, very informative, educational. The problem is, how do we get people to listen? How do we get people to change their habit?
Right.
Comfort food. People love comfort food. Comfort food is what they know, but it's killing them. It's killing us. I mean, not them. It's killing us. I think we have, what's the trade-off is, do you want to live longer, better health, or do you want to indulge in the kind of food that you've known all your life, even though it's killing you? It's that simple. It's not hard. The fear factor, like you said, you need to understand that this thing you need to be scared because it's going to kill you. And so, I don't know how more profound we can get with that statement, but it is what it is, and people need to understand the reality of it. We live in the Caribbean. Women who are heavy, plus size is very attractive for men. It's a cultural thing. Men in the islands like their woman, with some meat, and
I knew there was a place for me in the world.
Well, of course. Whatever. But that's the weirdness of ethnicity and culture, and around the world. And so we gotta understand that we gotta make some changes. That's
what? I know you guys are gonna have me back, because that opens up a whole new discussion around what people respond to. I talked earlier about bringing the future closer. But the other one is actually the generational thing.
Yes.
Women do not like to pass things on to their offspring. If you told a Black woman that you being obese has, or smoking, or whatever other risk that creates an environment around the child, impacts the lifespan of your offspring, that's going to get them to act quicker than if it is about themselves.
Okay. Well, that's to be continued. That's to be continued. That's a great
point.
I look forward to having you back on the program.
Absolutely.
And so we will follow up and schedule. I want to thank you so much for making your special guest appearance on the marketplace today.
Thank you. Our virtual hug.
Yes, that's our virtual hug.
All right, guys, we are going to transition to the second segment of the Marketplace Jumpstart, and that's business and economy and public policy. We'll be right back.